is not just a technical implementation, so it's a journey for which the system will improve all the business processes. And then we need to explain and align with them what are the key processes that we will automate and what will be the expected goal of implementing the system. It's not IT who should participate in those projects. Are really important that business users are always interacting with us. So any CFO or any CEO should be also informed about what is the output of the project and also what are the expectations about or what will be a successful project. So depending on the corporate that we are implementing SAP, the successful project will be completely different depending on what are the expectations. It's not just to implement SAP and then once it's implemented to forget it. It's a journey for which we will try to fit the requirements with a system that time to time will be improving until reach out the best approach in the coming years. So they should think about long term.
Good morning, and thanks for joining on another session of the never-ending climb for a stronger supply chain and procurement for companies running SAP. Today, we have a special guest, Danny Matteo. And Danny brings 16 years of experience on international rollouts and implementations and upgrades, and deep experience in finance, getting into sometimes procurement and commercials as well. Danny, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and it's my pleasure to connect to that series. So it's really amazing.
Amazing. So here's where I'm hoping we can get into this, is all of your experience, all of the things that you've seen that have worked well, the things that have maybe not worked so well. There's often organizations that don't do large ERP projects very often. And what I keep finding is the consultants that do the project have experience because they do it over and over again. And the organizations that are doing it, they don't have that same experience. So I'm hoping that we can get your help to share some things that are on your heart for advice for CFOs and procurement leaders and IT leaders for what goes into a successful large-scale project.
Good, yes. I will do my best and try to explain and share some experience, and it will be really useful to big corporate.
Amazing. All right. When we were talking just before this, we were talking about how there's often engagement. And ultimately, we know that we want to unlock adoption. But one of the things that happens early in a project and all the way through a project is this engagement. What are you seeing that's working really well for engaging the business and the key stakeholders?
Yeah, so the engagement is really important in order to keep all the different stakeholders motivated and also trying to improve the project and moving forward with the different deadlines that the different sponsors have been defined. And in order to improve the motivation and to keep the engagement, what I recommend is always to clearly communicate and send different important topics that they will participate. So at the end, at the beginning of the project, we need to first set the expectations and define what are the main key topics that each of the different stakeholders will participate. And then during the project, do multiple workshops in which the different stakeholders are participating in them, and we always show what are the key functions that the system will cover. And in all of those workshops, we are always doing some demos in showing them how is the system performing in those areas. And then they should retrofit to us what are the feedback from them and trying to improve the system based on the feedback that we got.
And those workshops and setting that expectation, it's really a two-way street. And what I've seen work really, really well is getting folks in and bringing them along through the whole journey. When you think about the most successful workshops to set expectations and bring people along with what those goals are, what are your favorite things from workshops? What have you seen in workshops that you wish more projects would run those workshops that way?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And usually, what or the most successful workshops are always choosing the real or the key participants for the areas that we will go through, and then always to define the proper agenda. So we need to make sure that the agenda is properly updated with all the key topics, always invite the key participants for those topics, and then try to do it as more dynamic as possible, showing into the system topic by topic or process by process, and then get continuously feedback. So we need kind of showing them, and then they should get back to us how is the process feeling for them, if they are feeling comfortable or not. We need to do an adjustment, but trying to do as more dynamic as possible in order that the users are realizing how the system will behave, and also to be sure that they are feeling confident for the next stages of the project.
I like the way that you described how important it is to bring people along for that journey and make them more dynamic. So there's so many of the workshops and project presentations that sometimes I think about some of the product updates out of Waldorf, and the new release will have this new feature, and it's hard to engage anyone with this tone. So when we think about the most dynamic workshops, when we think about getting the guests, those key users, getting them to try it too, right?
Yeah.
There's one thing to watch, and it's another thing to get their hands on the keyboard and to get the people that are going to be using that new system, especially say, for instance, they're coming from a world of using the older transaction codes and they're moving to a world of Fiori and of, a new user experience. So those topics are, it's hard for me, as an example, to get excited about budgeting, but I know that there are people that love budgeting and they get very passionate about it. So finding the people with the passion to bring them in so that they know that you bring energy and dynamic engagement in those workshops.
Sure.
One of the next things that we were talking about is across different departments, there's a common risk of each department goes through their own workshops without necessarily integrating across departments. And so, we talked a little bit about procurement and finance, and sometimes also then how the procure to pay process flows down into vendors and how it's important to bring some of those vendors into this. So you were sharing a bit about how integration of process and data and focusing on those top vendors is so important. Can you share some more about that?
Yeah, that's also a really important topic. And in really big corporates, it's difficult to have a larger group of people and also involve all the different teams. At the end, we have multiple areas, and those areas have the corresponding relationships. So we have procurement, and we have all the warehouse management, also all the accounts payable and the treasury team. And those areas are also proceeding kind of the same flow or end-to-end flow. So what we recommend as part of the workshops is focus in end-to-end flows, and then defined for each of the different workflows, workshops, what will be the end-to-end flows that we will cover. And then in those end-to-end flows, invite the key points or the key people that are main stakeholders for those ones. So if we are doing the procurement process for third parties, we need to involve, since the people that are purchasing the warehouse and the finance people that will post the invoice and proceed with the payment. And then we show into the system a basic flow, third party, supplier, how the flow goes through, as part of keeping them engaged, as at the end they will intercommunicate the different areas between them. So it's always important not only focus in one process, it's the end-to-end flow for that. As part of the workshop, you also mentioned as part of the improving the integration with the vendor. So that's also another important topic. So in big corporates, there are a set or a set radius of vendors, and we need to keep also a really confidence, a motivation with them in order to work together as a team. Although we don't belong to the same company, we have some goals to improve the processing between them. And with S4HANA, there are many tools that we can take advantage and a lot of integration platforms for which we can communicate with the vendors in order to improve the relationships. So it's ideally in order to keep the confidence and also the value flow of between the company and the vendor to integrate as much as possible, considering all the stock movement, also the invoices that can be highly automated, the purchase order or the purchase requisitions from SAP into the vendor, and the different value flows. So ideally, what we should do is do an assessment about what are the main key processes that we are doing more manual ways, and then discuss with the vendor to integrate them via web service or via different integration applications that we can use to improve that.
What I love about that, Danny, is the way you emphasized it's not just the organization looking at itself. It's looking across that supply chain and working with some of those top vendors to make sure that you're in sync, because the end-to-end process is so important. And the end-to-end process includes those suppliers and it includes those customers. To think, beyond the four walls of the business when you're implementing this is so important. Danny, did you have something else that you would want to give as advice for a procurement leader or a finance leader or an IT leader that's just going into one of these projects? What advice would you give them to help them get the most out of their project and to bring the most powerful mindset to that project?
They should be aware that it's a journey that is not just a technical implementation. So it's a journey for which the system will improve all the business processes. And then we need to explain and align with them what are the key processes that we will automate and what will be the expected goal of implementing the system. It's not IT who should participate in those projects. Are really important that business users are always interacting with us. So any CFO or any CEO should be also informed about what is the output of the project and also what will be a successful project. So depending on the corporate that we are implementing SAP, the successful project will be completely different depending on what our expectation. It's not just to implement SAP and then once it's implemented to forget it. It's a journey for which we will try to fit the requirements with a system that time to time will be improving until reach out the best approach in the coming years. So they should think about long term and trying to make sure that the main key topics are always addressed with the SAP implementation.
running a project like a business project,
Correct.
not just an IT project. So important. Danny, I'm so grateful for you joining today and sharing your experience. And for everyone watching, thanks again for joining on this week's episode of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement for Companies Running SAP.
Thank you so much.